My name is Jess Hoskins. I'm the Director of Special Services at CVU. Thank you for being here tonight. So the purpose tonight is really to share with you all the proposed policy around phones in the district that is being considered, and to gather your input and feedback. And we really appreciate the opportunity to have dialogue with you on this issue and look forward to a good, respectful conversation. So in the beginning of the school year, the board charged Adam, I think, there was a formal request from the board to have Adam, our superintendent up here, pull together a committee of people to consider the question of what impact a phone-free policy would have in the district. So Adam pulled this group of people together. The special services director was myself. We had a couple people from the district level on it, some of our digital learning leaders, students, teachers, and principals from across the district. And we met 4 times over the course of the fall, looked at a lot of data. I figured out the questions that we wanted to ask, the information that we wanted to seek. We connected with other schools, some of us did site visits with the intention of making a recommendation to the board in December. We looked at a lot of data and had a lot of conversation about it. I'm not going to spend too much time going into all of the data, but we have a lot of resources that we can point you to if you're interested in looking more closely. But here are some of the infographics that are sort of the more headliney things that we looked at. So the reason we're having this conversation is that our community, our schools, and our community more broadly are concerned about the impact that phones and access to social media are having on our kids. Kids are spending 3 hours or more a day on social media. Kids are getting upwards of 230 notifications on their phone in any given day, and the impact of the fractured attention and the impact that that's having on academics and social emotional well-being. Okay. Here are some, we're talking a lot in our community and in our schools about the increase in anxiety and depression in teens and our young adults, concerns around academic honesty. All of these things are sort of in the mix when we're thinking about what's going on with phones and social media in schools. So we talked. We interviewed, we visited, we surveyed, most particularly Harwood Union High School, a little bit south of us, has implemented a phone-free bell-to-bell policy for this school year. Catherine, our principal, has spent a good amount of time talking with their principal and getting some really good feedback on their experience and how they went about doing this with their kids. Thetford Academy, Mount Anthony, down south, very down south, near Brattleboro, right? Yeah. So from across the state. We got some feedback from our faculty and staff. When we asked faculty and staff at the beginning of the year, they thought that a bell-to-bell practice at CVU would improve student learning. 87% said yes. We asked if they thought a phone-free environment would positively impact student mental health. 94.9% said yes. And should we explore moving towards implementing a phone-free practice at CVU? 89% of our faculty and staff said yes. So that all happened in October, November. Students were surveyed. The most recent feedback from students was this month. Majority of students strongly oppose the idea of having a phone ban. About 10% approve of it, and the rest feel neutral or annoyed, but not necessarily against it. So in December, the recommendation of that group that I showed you at the beginning, the formal recommendation that we made to the board was that the school board should develop and approve the adoption of a bell-to-bell phone-free policy effective in August of this year. And that brings us to where we are right now. So the board is having current discussions about this. There was another discussion at the board meeting last night with some public comment and board discussion. We've had conversations with our student body. We're having we've gone back to the faculty and faculty meeting for updated, now that it's a little bit more tangible than when we asked them in October. The overwhelming majority said that they continue to support moving in this direction. We have plans to meet directly with staff around their particular questions and concerns, and we're doing this event tonight to gather parent and community feedback. Okay. That took me 9 minutes. I gave myself 15. You all have 30 extra seconds for your comments. And I do have a second microphone that we're going to pass down. The students agreed, I don't know if reluctantly or not, I wasn't quite sure, that they wanted to share their perspective first, but I can't stand it.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Mira Novak, and I'm a senior here at CVU.
Hi, my name is Marina Hallisey. I'm a sophomore here.
I'm Nick Canaday. I'm a 9th grade English teacher here.
I'm Erica Lee. I'm a school board member from Shelburne.
I'm TJ Mead. I'm a new head of house director, and I was a teacher for the last 20 years.
I'm Steve Hale. I'm a pediatrician at Essex Pediatrics.
Hi everyone, I'm Angela Arsenault. I am a recent former board member here in CVSD and also a state representative from Williston. I am the lead sponsor on the statewide phone and social media free schools bill.
If you just pass it back on to Mira, that would be great. And before we go any further, I meant to say at the beginning, and I forgot, but I want to say now that Gary, one of our AV magicians, is here tonight taping this event so that folks who can't be here can hear the conversation. We're going to be sending out a community survey broadly to our parents and caregivers. So if you prefer not to be on camera, I just want to point that out. He's pointing it primarily at the panel. All right. So Mira, I'm just going to give you a prompt, and then you share your thinking for about 3 to 4 minutes. I'll wave at you after 3.5 minutes, and then we'll go from there, okay? All right, so Mira, I'd love to hear you talk to us about what the current practices are at the high school. Our students are both high school students, so we're going to be talking primarily from that perspective. And I lost myself. What impact do you expect to see if things were to change?
Yeah, so I can start by talking about in my 8th grade year when we were all getting back from COVID. We were doing hybrid school. I remember lots of people were using their phones in class, and the kind of excuse was phones are allowed in high school, so we can be doing this. And then getting to high school, as I said, I'm a senior, so I've seen kind of like 4 years in many, many different classes. And what I can say is that phone allowance is extremely dependent on grade and class and teachers. While no teachers and classes are fully accept phones, some teachers are less prone to kind of notice or kind of call out students when they are on their phones. It's also really about a student's comfort level using their phones, really depends on what class they're in. I also notice kind of maybe the demand of a class really varies when people are on their phones. Very few people are on their phones in my AP Stats class because we're just trying to keep up. But in some other classes, I feel like people are more comfortable using their phones. I do notice that a lot of the burden of kind of policing the phones is left on teachers, and which really isn't their job. In class, though I definitely do see people using their phones and kind of being distracted from their work based on their phones, a way that it has also really stuck out to me is in social settings at our school. I believe that school is a place of learning in class, but also absolutely outside of class, in the hallways, in advisory, during lunch, during free blocks. And I've seen in high school just so many people in these spaces, not socializing, but instead using their phones. I personally feel that I retreat into my phone when I feel uncomfortable, instead of kind of embracing that discomfort. in the hallway when I'm not walking with anybody, I often look at my phone and scroll, even if I'm not really looking at anything in particular, just so I don't have to look people in the eye. And when I get to a class, I often pull out my phone first instead of sitting down and talking to my friends and talking to my teachers. I also feel like I don't really do this alone. Oftentimes I do this because I see other people doing this and don't want to just be sitting there when other people are on their phones. Let me see. Yeah, I think people when they get into classes really kind of, I think when you enter a class, it's a great time to kind of talk to your teachers and friends and pull out your stuff and get settled and go to the bathroom and get some water, but during this time I only see people on their phones. Phones to me feel kind of like an unhealthy coping skill that students are using because they have access to avoid things like creeping in anxiety about all the things that school makes us anxious about. I believe that kind of with like the Phone Free School Initiative, I really hope that a lot of weight can be taken off teachers to be policing the phones. In general, I think that a lot of instruction, like time for instruction, is wasted for teachers telling students to be off their phones or managing that. And just teachers are not hired to manage phones, but that's like the job that I see them doing a lot. Yeah, that's all I have to say for that.
You're well within your time. You've got a whole nother minute if you want it.
Okay. I don't think I need that.
Okay, that's all right, no pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Anyone has any questions?
Well done. We'll do questions
absolutely,
after.
absolutely.
Yep. Yep. All right. All right, Marina, same questions directed at you.
All right. So in my personal experience, like Mira said, the phone use varies from class to class. I have some classes where we are automatically expected to put the phones in the pockets at the beginning of class, and I have some classes where the teachers really don't care. And I definitely noticed that there is a lot more like distraction in those classes that don't really police phones that much. But I also noticed that there's kind of more of a sense of like ease in those classes as well, so it goes back and forth. I like the idea of teachers having different practices, but it can be kind of disconcerting to go from like class to class, where I have one class where we can't have phones out at all or will be sent to the house office, and I have another class where no one cares. So yeah, I feel like kind of having like a set practice is very important and keeps people like on track. And I just wanted to like consider the distinction between policy and practices, because there may be a policy, but you know, like there will be different practices, and that's just how it might be. And then for the impact, I think that there would be a big impact, whether positive or negative. I do think that there would be more focus and more opportunity for learning. But I feel like a lot of people would have some unease about not having regular communication with their parents that they've grown accustomed to in their time in high school. I think it will cause tension between staff and students, but yet there is already some tension there. And I think it will be a positive impact for learning, but I think there will be other problems that arise with it. So we just kind of have to wait and see.
I'm just giving you the 10-second teacher pause, see if there's anything else that you want to add there.
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, we can get it right over to Nick then. Nick, could you talk to us about how the current practices are in place in your classrooms and what that looks like from your perspective?
Yeah, totally. So I've been teaching for 13 years, and during that time, I've witnessed a lot of different cell phone practices. A lot of thinking has gone into the way that we try to manage cell phone use in classes. I think every teacher has something that they feel really works for them and their students. And I've got to say the most effective one that I have experienced is the one that I collaborated with on my team this year. There's 6 educators on this team, and we all do the same practice, which is really a zero tolerance cell phone policy. If we see the cell phone, it goes to the house office. And that could be, you know, within the last 30 seconds of class even, if a student pulls out their phone. They're not supposed to have them in the classroom, because learning is really happening for us as much as we can make it happen, and that goes right up until the bell. And I think, you know, whenever you want to meet your kids where they are, right? And you don't want to get into power struggles with them all the time. And having cell phones as a part of that equation always creates that potential for conflict with kids who really feel like they need to be on them. And we really feel like we need to be teaching and they need to be learning. And I think what makes our current policy so effective on my team is that we are all very consistent with it. But again, that is a very difficult thing to do, especially in a school this size, right? Everybody thinks that something is going to work differently, or there's always like an extenuating circumstance. And it's so hard to be consistent also whenever you're trying to meet the needs of every individual student. And I don't know, my sense is that a plan that is consistent and that comes from the top down on this, so that it can take that weight off of my shoulders and I don't have to be the bad guy or the teacher that's mean because I take the cell phone, when really what I want to do is teach kids to love Shakespeare and to love writing and write a poem from their own brain, not from ChatGPT sitting next to them on the table. So those are just some of the top concerns I have. But the other thing that I really wanted to share tonight was probably the number one issue that I have seen arise from cell phone use, not necessarily in the classroom, but in the other spaces, in our clubs, in the cafeteria, in the hallways, is just the bullying, the awful things that kids can and do say about each other, take pictures of, record, pass around, put on the internet forever of other kids, right? Of teachers as well. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that someone's taken a photo of my butt in class and posted it online with some whatever. I'm an adult, I can handle that, but I imagine that that's a lot more difficult to handle when you're 14. And that happens, if not daily, certainly weekly. And I just think about how much different our school would be if the kids did not have to worry about that. I think back to my own time in high school and I think, thank God nobody was recording me, right? But these kids have that constant anxiety, and I just really see it impacting their learning. They're thinking about that when they should be thinking about Shakespeare and poetry, in my opinion. So.
Thank you, Nick. Erica, could you talk to us about the bigger picture, why the board is considering a policy, and maybe also talk to us about the difference between policy and procedure, and why one might be considered over the other?
Yes. So the board is considering a policy, or we started considering a policy about a year ago, maybe last June, when it really the topic was in the news a lot and around the country, seeing people enact these policies, consider the policies, and it became part of a national conversation that we wanted to be part of. And so the board, as just described, charged the administration with forming a committee to study the issue and make a recommendation. We felt it was important to have people who are in the building every day, students and staff and faculty, collect that information and inform the board, because we're not in the building every day. And so that's what happened, and then the recommendation was made for bell-to-bell policy. So that is why we are considering it. And the distinction between policy and procedure. So the board's role is not to decide, are they put in pouches or are they in the backpack or anything like the day-to-day management of this. The board's role is to craft a policy that that makes a statement and gives a rationale for why it's important. And then the administration and their teams craft the how. So it's really like the what is the policy, and the procedures is the how do you make that policy work in the schools. So we could go a number of different routes. I mean, we could adopt a policy that then the administration creates procedures for. And as discussed at the board last night, it could just be procedures that the district decides to put into the schools without a policy. The reason you would want a policy is, there are a few reasons, but one is consistency. We're a very large district, the largest in the state, and so if we want this policy and procedures to apply to all of our schools, then a policy is the most consistent way of doing that, and you can still have school-specific procedures. What happens at Shelburne Community School and how they manage it is going to be different than how it's managed at CVU. And also, policies transcend any change in personnel. So if our superintendent changes, principals change, administration changes, the policy can only be changed by the board. The board adopts the policy, and to change it, you would need to go back to the board for it. So it just is consistent over time. Do you want my own personal perspective? Is that what I'm... So I'm chair of the policy committee and have been in lots of discussions about this. I am also a social worker by trade and have worked in schools for my entire career, from middle school up through college, which is where I work now. And I feel that this policy is really important. I do understand the arguments against it, and I empathize with them, and I don't think that there is a perfect solution here. I do understand that phones are powerful tools, but I do think that the benefits of going phone-free outweigh the benefits of having schools with phones in them. I have, just for context, I also have I have a child in Shelburne Community School in 5th grade, but also a 9th grader here at CVU. I think that the argument that that students need their phones all day so that they can learn how to manage their cell phone use is not, this is an incredibly addictive piece of machinery. I mean, I experience it. I feel addicted to my phone at times and have made adult decisions to leave my phone outside of my bedroom, for example, and it literally changed my life when I did that, but I don't expect that a 14 or 15-year-old is going to make the decision to be different than their peers and leave it in their backpack during the day. So I think that it is the responsibility of adults to create a healthy learning environment, and that's what we should be doing for our kids. I also feel that the board charged a talented group of administrators with studying the issue, and the people in the building are saying that this is what they want. And I don't think it's on those outside of the building to say what our students should be doing. I mean, obviously we all have input, but if the teachers and administrators, educators are saying that this is what's good for our kids for X, Y, and Z reason that you're hearing, as a board member, I want to stand behind teachers and educators and say, yes, I support you. You've told us what you need, and that's what we should be doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, TJ, here you are as an administrator. Can you talk about what you're seeing, what the current impact is, and what you expect would be different?
Sure. First, our students, and Nick in particular, I think really said a lot of the things I already had written down. It's problematic. But I will say, in my two plus weeks in this role, I've had a chance to get into a lot of classrooms, and the point that I think it was Mira made around the grade, the subject area, and the teacher have a huge impact on phone use within that room. And I think that's probably been the most surprising part for me. Is as I walk from room to room, I just see different applications of our school policy. The one thing that is not different from room to room is that the teacher, I think, has to, or at least feels like they are policing a good amount of time in the classroom. Again, 2 weeks ago, I was in the classroom doing that, and a lot of our time was spent, the first, could be 10, 15 minutes, just trying to get everyone's phone away from them. And we have 85-minute classes, so that's a good portion of our time. So that has not changed. So we're seeing a lot of different ways of managing phones. Some have been really successful, others have been less. My last 2 weeks, I've seen the other side, and this is the part that Nick discussed, where a lot of my day as a head of house, is when someone brings me a student or brings me their phone, and then working with that student takes up a good deal of my day managing a student's cell phone. And sometimes it feels like even protecting that phone from that student getting back towards their phone. So almost having to guard their phone in the office. In terms of impact, if the phones weren't here, I think what we would see, expect to see a reduction in distraction during class. One of the number one things we see is students I think less of their phone in class and more of them doing their best to leave the classroom so they can see their phone, be with their phone. So a lot of water breaks, bathroom breaks, can I take a walk? And in reality, that is so that they can use their phone, see their phone. We have students that set kind of meetups with their friends who are in other classes because they have their phone. I think we'd see an increase in in-person interaction outside of class, but also inside of class. A reduction in the bullying that Nick brought up. I think we'd see that has been a good part of my day has been, I've used the word drama, but drama that just swirls around the phones. And as Nick said, and I didn't realize this was a reality, but less students being filmed and less teachers being filmed. I think there's a lot of content of me out on the internet now, especially the last couple of weeks. And the students are they're just filming us, and they're filming each other nonstop. Thank you.
Thanks, TJ. All right, so Dr. Hale, can you take us out of the school a little bit and talk to us about what you see and your colleagues see in your practice related to adolescents and social media and screen time, and the thinking that your practice has for our community on this?
Sure, happy to do that. We actually met today. We meet regularly as providers just to go over things. So I told them I was coming, and so this is kind of a group effort. So for us, the social media is all about the mental health, anxiety, depression. We think it's causing at younger ages ADD or people thinking they have ADD, self-harm, suicidal thought. Unfortunately, we've had kids commit suicide because of bullying in my career. And it's a huge battle. It's where we spend most of our day. Probably 75% of our day is doing this. Just a little perspective, and we have some mental health providers in our office, and in 2020, September 2020, we had 3 or 4 providers, and we didn't have a wait list to be seen for our kids. And now we have over 21 mental health providers in our little practice, and we have a wait list of over 200 kids. Any of you who try to access mental health for your kids know how hard it is in the community. It's just exploded, and it's not going away, and our concern is that this generation is going to be having kids, scary thought for parents, in 10 years, and it perpetuates it if you can't stop the cycle. The analogy that we've been using with Meredith Monahan, who's one of my partners, came up with is this is a lot like smoking. When smoking first started, it was good. When it given to the soldiers in World War II, you focus better, it helps you deal with stress, it's a really good thing. And then they realized it wasn't a good thing, and then it realized it was really bad, and then we realized, how do we get rid of it? And one of the things that turned that around was the Surgeon General saying smoking was bad for your health. And it became a society change versus an individual change. And it's pretty fascinating if you track social media and see the same thing. Social media is great. You can connect with your friends across the world and across the country. You can get in charge of your parents. And then all of a sudden, gee, maybe it's not so good. And now it's just bad. It's just bad for kids. But it's really hard. It's very addictive. So it's hard to just stop. So part of what we think is any sort of societal change makes it easier. So when they raise the rate on how much cigarettes cost, every time they do that, cigarette use goes down. So even though individuals like, we just should stop using them, it's really hard. So the school to institute this then makes it easier as a parent, like, hey, you can't have your phone in school. That's just a school rule. So part of that change becomes institutional, which helps kids and families hopefully turn it around. One of the things that we talk a lot about from early ages is trying to build resilience and distress tolerance in our kids. And we think that phones really inhibit that. And phones where parents and kids can access each other 24/7, we think is very negative. There's too much. It's the helicopter parenting, and anybody who's worked in colleges knows that kids aren't as mature as they used to be. So we're trying to get them from, we talk about this in prenatal visits all the way through, to develop resilience. Like a little bit of distress is okay. They need to learn how to mature and how to work this out. And the phone, I think, inhibits that instead of helps with that. So we're very excited. That's why I'm here tonight representing our practice, because we think it's so critical, and it may be a small piece, but you have to start somewhere.
Thank you. Angela, could you talk to us about where the legislature is on the issue, and then if there are any research pieces that you're super fluent with on the top of your head that haven't been shared yet that you think are important, that would also be great.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I would say throughout last legislative session, there was a bill introduced to prohibit phones, personal electronic devices in schools, and it went further than that and ended up, I think in some ways it went a little too far for some folks and turned into a study that the AOE was going to have to do on the issue of personal electronic devices in schools, and passed the Senate, but the House Education Committee didn't have time to take it up. And since that was the end of a biennium, that bill died, as we say, last year. So throughout the summer and fall, I worked with some incredible advocates in the Phone Free Schools movement, as well as the Vermont School Boards Association. I was in contact with the Vermont Principals Association, the Vermont Superintendents Association, and the Vermont NEA, the Vermont Medical Society, a number of Vermont pediatricians, family practitioners, adolescent child psychiatrists and psychologists. So I really consulted a wide variety of professionals and advocates to settle on what was introduced in both the House and the Senate this year, which is a bill that says every school in Vermont will have a bell-to-bell phone-free policy. So the bell-to-bell stipulation was really important, and that means that from the arrival bell to the dismissal bell, the policy states that phones are away. Phones, Apple Watches, earbuds, Bluetooth earbuds, there's a whole definition section in the bill, are away for the day and inaccessible to kids, ideally. We left up to schools and districts to decide the best storage solution for each school. We didn't want to be overly prescriptive, and so schools can decide exactly how they're going to store these devices. There's a second provision in the bill that prohibits schools from communicating directly with students via social media. And this is something that we were hearing about more and more. I have two students here at CVU who also are affiliated, attend VTC, and I know that one of my students regularly DMs with their teacher at BTC through Instagram DMs, and that's just not appropriate. It's not necessary, and it's not. There's really no reason for that, and it can lead to FERPA violations and all kinds when schools are using social media to communicate with kids. So this isn't about schools using social media. Schools could still promote events and things like that on social media, but they can't tell students that in order to get information or participate in X, Y, or Z, they have to be on social media. So right now, the bill, I don't know if any of you have heard, but there's kind of a lot going on in education in Vermont right now. So the House Education Committee didn't get to this bill before crossover, but I'm very excited to say, and this kind of changes by the day, but as of today, this bill is likely going to move out of the House through the Commerce Committee. And this tells you how wide-reaching this is, too. So it started in House Education, now the House Commerce Committee, which is looking at a bill called Kids Code, which deals with regulating the design of social media products. They're looking to attach this bill to the Kids Code bill. And on the Senate side, the bill currently sits in the Health and Welfare Committee because our Senator Jenny Lyons, who is chair of that committee, feels very strongly about the bill and actually gained possession from Senate Education to take testimony on it in Health and Welfare. So I think that it shows you how broad the topic really is. And to me, how important it really is that we could be talking about consumer protection, which is in commerce, we're talking about health and welfare, and we're talking about education. Could have just as easily gone to the healthcare committee in the House because of the mental health aspect. So I'm incredibly hopeful there is broad bipartisan support for this bill in both the House and Senate. It was introduced with a third of the House as co-sponsors, which I was really excited about. 11 senators signed on as co-sponsors out of 30, so really broad support and growing, actually, the more that people hear about it. So I'm excited. It was a disappointment for the bill not to make crossover, because that's usually a sign that we're not going to get to it till next year. But there's so much support for this and such enthusiasm that there are a number of committees looking for a way to pass it this year. And so if that happens, it would go into effect. The policy would be required starting in December of this year, because we'd want to give schools throughout the state, give the VSBA time to write a model policy, which they've already agreed to do, and then give time for schools and school boards to adopt the policy and enact everything. So that's where we stand today. It does change minute to minute.
Thank you. All right, we're doing pretty good on time. We're just 2 or 3 minutes ahead of where I had hoped to be. Very well done. So I'd like at this point to open it up to questions or comments from folks who are in the audience. You are welcome to direct a question to a specific person. We also have administrators here who may be able to step in and answer if the question isn't directly applicable to any of the folks in the front. And wasn't sure exactly the size of the crowd to expect. I think probably, I'm not going to time keep too strictly, but just be aware, 2-ish minutes to give everyone a chance to speak if they would like to. We are also going to be sharing a survey, a Google survey at the end to capture comments if that's the way you prefer to give us feedback. So I think we'll leave that mic up there. If someone's directing a comment towards one of you, and I will come around with a mic for folks in the audience. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'll just talk loud. It's not a question, just a comment to hear. I just feel for the teachers, and I guess it's corroborated by those charts, that I know at home how hard it can be. We have 2 high school students, and to think that a teacher is fighting that, not fighting the battle, but dealing with that in a classroom with a dozen or more teenagers is just really discouraging. And to hear, I, for some reason, thought in the classrooms maybe it was already something that students knew, but to hear from students say that it really is daily, and from teachers that it's daily, and on the pie charts it shows that everyone, all the teachers and staff, well not all, but most think that, and then to hear some students say that some teachers don't care, it sounds to me like they just gave up. Or not gave up, but just it's too steep to do it, and so they just hope to get through it and hope that students put it away. It's just really, it's really tough to hear, and I know the best we've been able to do is just keep the phones at home 1 day a week, and I know that that's kind of a hard thing, but I know that it's wonderful to hear that the legislature is doing things, and to hear that it would be December. It's like, oh gosh, what can we do before that? And so, anyway, I just am feeling really kind of a lot of sadness for the teachers and what they're having to face, and hoping that we as parents, can make the decision on our end what we can do to help those teachers right now. So, that's all.
I know we know each other, but not everybody else knows you. I meant to ask if folks could just introduce themselves or let us know how you're connected to the community.
My name's Rodney Centeno. I've been subbing in some of the schools locally, so I see it with Chromebooks, and I just think, wow, to add that and phones, how hard that would be. I have a daughter in 9th grade here and a son who's a junior.
Can't believe we're that old.
Are you okay if I talk loud? Or am I going?
Is that okay for the camera, Gary?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Chelsea. I have a student at WCS, so not at high school. So I really appreciate this collective action. Whenever we go to our pediatrician's office, we ask our doctor to ask our kid, like to say, what's your opinion on screens? And they say, avoid it as long as possible. So our plan is to avoid it as long as possible. But my question is for the students, actually, thank you for sharing. If my daughter shows up to high school without a phone, and in those in-between spaces, and in the classrooms where kids do have their phones out quite a bit, how would that feel as that student compared to like what you see going around? Like I'm nervous for how she will feel, and there's that pressure for parents then to kind of capitulate to that, but how does that feel as a student without a phone in those, when everybody else is on their phones?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think generally, like, kind of doing something different and kind of against the norm at CVU is really accepted. And, like, I don't think that, like, I don't think your child would necessarily, like, be bothered by other people if they chose not to bring a phone. I think that's probably a good thing to start doing for them. I think that, like, they might even kind of attract a group of people towards them, like as when they make friends that kind of enjoy these like face-to-face kind of like non-screen interactions. So I think that could be really meaningful.
Yeah, I like your question too. Yeah, I feel like you are able to make friends a lot more easily if you don't have your phone as like a social barrier. You know, there will be some times, like passing time or whatever, where everyone is on their phone and it might feel like a little bit lonely, but I like the phrase of like, be the change you want to see. And I mean, like, if you're putting this into practice, it could very well like change other people's minds too.
I have a 9th grader this year, and I have been told by my children that we are very strict compared to every other family, so I'm glad to hear from you. And we told our kid, our 9th grader, you can take your phone to school, but it has to be off for the whole day. On day 1, he's texting me, sorry mom, I'm on my phone, but I was told by my teacher to use it in class. So it's used as a tool in classrooms, and I do understand that's a benefit in some classes. We've heard that from a lot of students and from community members. But I guess I just warn you that I don't know how teachers handle that when their kids don't have a phone, but they're being asked to use it in class.
We give the students Chromebooks. Anything that like they reasonably need to do, I believe, for learning could probably be done on a Chromebook, including some video recordings capabilities. So there is that aspect. And just to maybe build off a little bit on the like using the phones in class, and to speak to what you were saying there in the back, it's not a dozen students that I have in my class, it's over 24. And it is so hard to monitor. If I'm saying, okay, we're going to use our phones to look up a vocab word for our essay or whatever, they're not going to use it just for that. Okay, it's so tempting. Snapchat's right there, right? Instagram is right there. Someone's texting them from another class or the hallway or wherever. The draw of all of the other things that phones do is so strong when you are 14 years old, and way more interesting probably than looking up like what perpendicular means. Okay, so also throwing that out there.
Can I add one thought that, do we, okay, here it comes.
Hi. Thank you all. Speaking of collective action, I heard about a study, Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation, and his lead researcher, Zach Roush. Zach Roush presented to the Women's Caucus, the Women's Legislative Caucus last year, and he shared a study with us that I believe it was young adults, so college-aged students in, I think it was Australia, and the question was, how much would we have to pay you to stop using social media for a set amount of time? I don't recall if it was a week or 30 days or something, and the average was $50, which isn't, not that much. But then the researchers asked, how much would we have to pay you to stop using social media for that period of time if we got all of your friends to stop using social media? And the answer was, it was less than $0. Basically, the students, the young adults were saying, I would pay you if you could get my friends to stop using social media. And that broke my heart, to think that our kids feel trapped. They feel trapped by both the addictive nature of the products, but also the ubiquity, which is no mistake, is all by design. This is all profit-driven decisions being made by highly intelligent researchers, very highly paid intelligent researchers at companies who care nothing about our children's mental health as they make trillions of dollars. And so this type of action that we have the opportunity to take in one school district in the small state of Vermont is part of a much larger effort, and we are doing more in Vermont to try to get at the design features through Kids Code, through data privacy bills. I know that, I don't know if y'all remember the Swiss cheese approach that Dr. Levine talked about a lot during COVID. Multi-layered mitigation, that's what we're trying to do. When we talk about the epidemic of youth mental health and social media use, we have to engage with this problem from a public health perspective, and we need to employ multiple layers of mitigation in the hopes that every layer has a hole or two or three or four, but if you keep adding layers, eventually you've got a pretty good protection, and we're talking about protecting our kids.
I'm Emily Donegan. I have 6 children. My oldest is a freshman at CVU. And I wanted to share something I'm working on. I shared a little bit about this at a PTO meeting at Charlotte Central School, but something I've seen work at other schools is the idea of a technology contract where parents outside of the school can connect with each other about social media, group gaming, group texting, these different things, and we can just connect with each other and say, hey, I'm not going to do this for my kid, are you not going to do this for your kid, so that we can connect with each other about that. And I have a 4th grader at CCS, and I've just received a blessing from the principal at CCS to reach out to the 4th grade families ahead of the transition to middle school to create one of these optional technology contracts. And I do have a lot of hope that, as we going forward, that, if we can collect a group of parents that are saying you can't tell me that everyone has this because I can tell you these 10 people in your class that aren't on this platform. If we can just find a way to connect with each other, I do have a lot of hope in that, and I'm hoping that that can be one of the strategies like Angela's talking about on top of a school policy. So I do feel pretty discouraged about social media use when it comes to my teenagers, but then when I think about my younger children, I actually feel very hopeful, and I'm hoping that we can kind of connect with each other as parents and as a community to just kind of say no. Yeah.
Another resource that you could access related, sort of in that same vein, is through Let's Grow Kids and the Wait Until 8th pledge, which is something that there's I live in the MMU school district, and there's a group of parents who are very active around doing exactly what you just said, and that's the vehicle that they're using to figure out who else in the community is looking for that.
I think this chime in really quickly because Emily just made a point that I came here to make, which is that I'm here hoping for thinking about policy that really connects to the experiences of kids who don't have relationships to phones or social media yet, and just wanting to make sure that that thinking is really highlighted in any sort of like practice building from the ground up. I have a 4th grader ready to sign her contract at CCS, and a 2nd grader at CCS as well. And they're already sort of in the culture of trying to understand what their relationship to these sort of like varying forms of devices and technology are going to be, but they don't have a relationship to the norms around phone use. And so when I think about a policy district-wide that might sort of change the values and the norms that like established practices around phone use, I'm thinking about my kids who are going to be like coming up in that and then figuring out those relationships over time, and that could be balanced against also the kids and the impact they're going to have of having to adjust their practices and sort of think about shifting norms with their established and pretty entrenched relationships with the phones.
Thank you. This is hard for me because I don't know everybody's name, but 1, 2, and then up front I saw 3.
Am I one?
You are.
My name is Heather Wynn. I have a 8th grader and a 5th grader at CCS. And I'm also an administrator in another school in Chittenden County. So I bring a perspective of a lot of weight. After 20 years of teaching, I've just noticed how much the profession has changed, and listening to the teachers talk tonight reminded me how hard it was becoming as I left the classroom a few years ago. And I think unless you're a teacher, it's hard to even grasp how moment-to-moment teaching is, and that your brain is constantly running with the plans that you've like spent so much time creating and poured so much love into, and have brought a wealth of experience and want so much for your students. And each minute you're thinking, what do I need to do next and for whom? And when you see a cell phone in a classroom, you are making a decision in that moment. Am I going to stop this entire thing that I planned for all these students, right? Thinking about their future and thinking about what we can bring and what we can learn and grow together, or am I going to get in a power struggle with this student right now about a phone? It is like, it's mind-blowing, it's infuriating, it's so sad. It kept me up at night as a teacher, and it keeps me up as an administrator in schools, just thinking about how much lost learning there is, and how defeating it is for teachers. So I really appreciate everybody that shared about that perspective tonight. Students, I'm really like hearing from you. You're trying to be flexible. You're like, I can be strong in this moment, and I can like go my own way. And I definitely think there are students that are such leaders, and I can hear that in both of you. I've had some experiences in my job this year listening to some high flyers get like talked down in the hallway by some other students who were mad that they didn't continue their streak because they were studying or just didn't get online. And so now from my parent perspective, I'm terrified to send my kid into a phone world. We haven't given him a phone yet. This is random timing, but he texted me from his Apple Watch tonight a video that is trying to compel me to give him Snapchat. And I don't know if he knew that was the timing of the evening, but yes, it's so hard to say no, so I appreciate what you're saying about that, like social contract in a community, but I absolutely think that the school policy can start before anything at the state begins. I think we can be leaders in this. I would really love that for my child. I would love that for our community, and I think we can do it. This is a strong district.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi. My name is Peter Chapin. I teach software engineering at Vermont State University, so you can probably infer what my biases might be from that. And I have to say that this is a complex topic, and I'm not quite sure what I think about it, which is one of the reasons why I came here. In hearing people talk about this problem, I find myself thinking the real problem is the social media applications that exist on these devices, rather than the phone technology itself. And so the banning of the phones is a kind of proxy to deal with the real problem, because there's really no other way to deal with that problem that I can think of. And dealing with the real problem is something that can't be solved by CVU or even the state of Vermont. It's really more of an observational question. I mean, I use technology all the time to communicate with my students. Of course, these are college students. And it's not, I don't have the kinds of problems I hear described here in my environment. And, but here we are.
Thank you for that.
Hi.
Hi, Adam.
Okay. So I didn't know if you were calling on me or not.
There was somebody else in the front row that you wanted to.
Oh, did I?
You go first.
No, go ahead. I can wait.
Well, I feel bad because I'm not actually from this district. My name's Liza Earl Centers, and I live in Montpelier, where our high school has just adopted this policy after a really thoughtful year-long process. And we were expecting all this parent pushback and student pushback when it finally got announced, and there was nothing. Like the school board meeting, it was all supportive parents, and the student parent info night, all supportive parents, and the students just have been given the data, like snippets of anxious generation, and it really resonates for them. And in some ways, I think they feel cared for, you know? Like, okay, as long as they're all in it together and no one's getting singled out. And in terms of the question of, is it just the social media? Like, I think our world as adults is so different. I might get maybe like 15 texts a day, mostly with my husband. But the average teenager is getting 247 texts or notifications a day, and the outliers are getting 4,500 in a day. So just to keep up with the texting alone is like a part-time job, and think of the like level of anxiety. But if they're all on pause, you know, then they don't have that same level to deal with. And some of us parents created a website. It's called phonefreeschools.vt.com. If you type it into Google, for some reason Google won't connect you with it. It's sort of biased against our website. You have to type in phonefreeschools.vt.com. But there are resources. There's a great curriculum called Kids' Brains on Screens. And Main Street Middle School in Montpelier is going to incorporate it into the 5th grade guidance curriculum. There's a parent version to do at home with your kid. It's $30, and it's 8 lessons, and kids really like it because it's not that you're bad, that you're addicted. It's that this brain science makes it impossible to resist. So that's a great resource. And there's a great video of Thetford students. They made it after school to help convince the legislators to pass this, and almost all of them said, we did not want this policy. We were really upset about this policy, but now I really like it. And one thing that made me so happy is they say because they get deprogrammed during the day to like not reach for their phone, they're on their phone less after school. It's now like the norm with their friends that they hang out face to face, which is what we really want for all of us, right? And there's a video we just did of Harwood teachers sharing every challenge that you all shared, the same challenges, and then how great this year was. One teacher was gonna retire and didn't. One teacher said, it's just been the most impactful thing in 22 years of teaching, was this decision. So, yeah, I'd say go for it.
I know you and Adam could argue about. Go ahead, Angela.
I was going to just add one more detail to it. And Liza is being modest because Liza actually made that Harwood video, went to Harwood, interviewed teachers, spent hours and hours editing together a 22-minute video clip that is really enlightening. And the Thetford video was student-made, and one of the students in that video said something that I just found, you pick up these, you don't know what's going to like convince you or convince you further, but and we just don't know, to the question of like, is it just social media? One student said his grades have gone up across the board since Thetford implemented their phone-free policy, and he realized that he was rushing through tests to get to his phone. He may be accessing, very well may be accessing social media, but I think that the power of the device itself is incredibly strong. The pull is incredibly strong. He was rushing through tests to get to his phone. Now that that is not an option, he checks his work. It's something that simple, and his grades have gone up across the board. At Harwood Union Middle and High School, where they've implemented a phone-free policy, they've just shared pretty recently that all of their academic indicators have gone up. They use jump rope just like we do here in this district, and again, across the board, kids are doing better academically based on these indicators. And I wanted to share one other data point, that Lamoille South Supervisory Union, which also implemented a phone-free policy this year, they did so for $0, by the way. They were like, this is the policy. Keep your phone in your car, or don't bring it to school. Or keep it in your locker, which I guess we don't really have lockers for everyone here, but we can get to storage later. Cross that bridge when you get to it. But anyway, they found that over the same time period from last year to this year, so I think it was, it's actually incorporated in the findings section of our bill, that they, from August to October 2023, before the policy, they had 9 hazing, harassment, and bullying claims. And then with the implementation of the policy, same time period, August to October 2024, there were 2. And there's data from a number of schools across the country who have implemented this policy, this type of policy, and all the data shows the same thing when it comes to hazing, harassment, and bullying, which is really significant, I think, is a really strong argument for the policy.
Adam, and then.
I'm glad you went first. That was good. So just from I think probably it might be useful to share a principal or administrator perspective, and Catherine, please feel free to jump in. I was trying to put myself and listening to the students and listening to teachers in the shoes of, community members and parents who might be here. And I think one of the thoughts might be like, where the heck has the administration been in this? Like, why is there a different policy in every classroom or a different procedure in every classroom? Why would you set school up that way? So I had that question in the back of my mind. And then I had the question at the board meeting last month, where the board was like, why didn't you include more students in this? Normally, CVSD and CVU is known for a really inclusive process where student voices lead the way. And it sort of didn't occur to me until later, but in 2022, we started the school year, I think it was 2022, after reading the book Stolen Focus by Johan Hari, with a really kind of a strict, much more strict policy school-wide. And it was, phones need to be away in academic and advisory spaces unless you have express permission from the teacher to use your phone for an academic activity. And we bought 70 of those pouch things for every room, or, like the door sleeves. And I think we had a little bit of a fight at the beginning of the school year, and I was never known as like being the authoritarian principal, right? But I think things started off that fall pretty well for the first couple of weeks. And then it didn't take long for those phones to creep back into spaces. And I think what people, and kind of to your point earlier, don't realize is just how insidious that pressure is on faculty and staff, on students. The draw to the phone is so strong. I don't think of myself as a principal where I normally had challenges enforcing rules, right? It was usually at CVU pretty easy, actually. People were pretty compliant. It was funny in this situation where people were like, no, not happening. So That's, I think, part of the reason why we were a little less inclusive with students. We knew students weren't going to be like, yeah, let's do this thing. And we'd already tried that more moderate approach for the last couple of years, and it just didn't work. So I don't know, Catherine, if you have anything you want to throw in that, or Principal Riley, I should say, but.
Well said, Superintendent Bunting.
Right on.
I think that is the challenge is, as Adam said, we have this practice and it slides in that you're in some classes, we're going to use, what's that, Kahoot. So we're going to take our phone out in math class to use Kahoot, and then phones are out. And now, well, it feels like phones, it's okay to have phones out. And then to get the phones back away after the Kahoot game is done is just really challenging. So it's not that it's under then Principal Bunting, things were all willy-nilly, whatever procedures. If you look in the handbook, it says very clearly, phones are away during class, advisory, and C3. Advisory and C3 are way more challenging even than class. So I think that's where the challenge is.
Well, advisory and C3 put the pressure on students and on adults to have unstructured interactions with one another, which some people find very uncomfortable.
Do you want to say what C3 is?
Sorry, clubs, community, and connect. So it's a time built into the school day where students can engage in one of many, many clubs in communities like walking the track, or connect where they're working with teachers directly on classwork.
And then there was, right here, and then there was a question after you in the row one.
Okay. I don't know if I'm going to be loud enough, but I'm going to try.
Your mic?
Yeah, thank you, Anna. My booming voice. So I'm Rachel Allard. I'm a parent of 2 elementary school students, well, one almost in Williston, so not at this stage yet. I wanted to come tonight to represent the side of the tech giants and cybersecurity, because while I'm not an expert, I've worked in digital marketing my whole career, 18 years, and my husband works in cybersecurity, and I just want to share how hard it is to moderate content, and from even just the platform perspective as a business who's had to use it to market to adults, how much it doesn't work. We have to mark our content as, like, you have to self-admit and set content as appropriate for kids or not. Just simply that fact that businesses are left to tell the algorithms what is okay for kids or not is not okay to me as a parent. And it also doesn't work. Sometimes when you set it, it still shows content to your kids. And listen, I love YouTube as a learning platform. There are so many things that I didn't know how to do before YouTube, but I don't trust it at all. And that's just one example, because I've seen it not work. The settings do not work because the algorithms prioritize what people will share, and people share things that disgust and surprise them, which includes things that you can have a really negative reaction to. So I think that's just the perspective from somebody who's actually used this for different tools, Facebook, all the social media for almost 2 decades. I would just share on the cybersecurity side, I think none of us, I didn't realize how easy information is to access now. So it's not just a social media thing. Every time you have a phone number or an account, you are able to be targeted. And cyber criminals know that kids have an even harder time spotting who is a real person, who is looking to take advantage of them or not. So I'm terrified just for my kids to have phones, because I know that people can send them messages that they will likely believe, and that they can access information about me to use in those messages. It is very, very common. And I really don't want to scare people, but just from the side of how ineffective the tools are at protecting our kids, I just don't trust the technology.
Mic, but that's okay. Yeah. Hi, my name is Megan Pigeon. I actually work for the school district. I'm a behavior interventionist, and am I loud enough?
Yeah, okay. I guess I was assuming I might be a minority coming here tonight, but I did have a little bit of hope that maybe the panel might have representatives from different views on this policy. But I'm feeling as a parent and as a behavior interventionist that I've seen that what you described in 2022, the policy to have the phones put away for the day, I've seen that plans like that can work, but we can't expect students to be taught something at the beginning of the year and then it's done. We have to revisit it. We have to teach it all year long, and that's our job. I mean, our job is to teach. And this is something that is not going to go away for them. It's going to be in their lives forever. And to me, it feels a little bit like a disservice to the students to not put that effort in. We teach students about their health and addiction to drugs and alcohol. That's something we teach at school. We teach students how to use AI properly. We teach teachers how to use AI properly. At the board meeting where we discussed banning the phones, we also discussed talking about how to use AI properly. So to me, it's really confusing that we would go from the lowest level of restriction on cell phones to the highest restriction level without giving the kids a chance and without doing our job to teach it all year long, not just from after April break till the end of the school year. I think we owe it to the kids to listen to them a bit more. I'm not sure when that survey went out. I would have liked to have seen that survey go out as soon as this was starting to be discussed so that kids would have really had a chance to give their input and continue to give their input rather than feeling like they have to play catch up. And many people don't even know this is being discussed. I didn't know about it until recently. That is probably a fault of my own. I should have been probably attending more board meetings. But parents, I don't think many parents know this is going on. There has not been a parent survey to go out, which feels very frustrating to me. I know it's not up to the parents to make this decision, but I do think our input is important. And then I'm also wondering which faculty and staff received the survey. Perhaps it was just CVU, because I did not receive a survey. And I've worked at 2 of the elementary middle schools, so I would have assumed that would have come out at some point. Sorry, I'm going over the 2 minutes. But I also think that we've done a pretty good job in the middle school and elementary schools of keeping it away for the day. And I think it's working really well. I know there's been some cracks in it, but I think kids know what the consequences are. The expectations are very clear, and the consequences are really clear. And to me, it just feels like we need to give the kids more of a chance. And I'm just going to say this also, that in speaking with 2 more things. The pouches. My daughter is one of the Harkness students here at CVU, and she's had the great opportunity to go to Harwood. And at the end of her last visit to Harwood, the students asked if they could speak with some of the other students there. And they're not keeping their phones in the pouches. So they spent these $25 to $35 on the pouches for all the students, and then they didn't use them, is my understanding. So the kids are keeping them in their backpacks. I don't think kids should have their phones in class. After hearing all of you, I don't think they should have them in the lunchroom. But I do think that there is a place and time during their day where they should be allowed to use their phones, and I think they should be allowed to have their phones in their backpacks on their person. It is a feeling of security for them. We have a lot of students, we're not talking at all about students' anxiety rising as a result of taking their phones away. I don't think that there's been any studies mentioned about that. My oldest daughter told me she probably could not have made it through her freshman year if she didn't have her phone, her lifeline. And if they're asking all 3 of my kids, what is the main reason you want your phones? It's because they're terrified. Every single classroom they walk into, they plan their escape. They know how they're going to get out of every single one of their classrooms in a school crisis, and they want to be able to text their mother and father that hi Mom, this is what's going on, what are we going to do? I love you. So that's my piece on that. And I'm over.
Thank you for that. I do want to just clarify the question about the survey. That was CVU and CVU faculty and staff only. And for the reason you said, that the K-8 schools have a practice that's pretty well established. And we felt like we needed to know what the CVU faculty and staff were on it. So that, and in terms of the community survey, I'm going to be sharing that once we're done. I see the students, I think maybe the students, and then Angela, and then I see your hand over here, sir, in the audience. Go ahead.
Hi, I love your point. I think that social media has no place in school, but I think that communication does, and teaching students how to use their phones in moderation. But I also understand that safety aspect, and I can relate to that. It's not something that's brought up enough, but the safety is a real thing, and phones, while taking them away can reduce anxiety in some ways, can also add anxiety. I want to know what's going on outside of school. I want to know if something bad has happened. I want to let people know if something bad is happening to me. And I think that social media itself is very bad for schools. I don't think that it helps in any way. But I think that the communication aspect, and I check my email all the time on my phone, and that's how I respond to emails really quickly. I think that phones are a great way of communication, but I don't think that taking them away for the whole day will solve all of the issues.
And the students are representing two different views. Marina actually spoke in front of the faculty with 4 other students who we invited to come today. And so she spoke very eloquently about why students should have phones in school and sent a really well-written, thoughtful email to the board a couple weeks ago. And the teacher that has a different opinion wasn't able to make it at the last minute. So we did try to get some balance. And as Jeff said, with the numbers, when almost 90% of your faculty want you to go phone free, it's hard to get the other side. Some of them don't want to know, don't want to trust that they're.
I think there may have been some parents that would have, been willing to be on the board, but I'm not sure how many parents know this is, or on the panel. Not sure how many parents are aware that this has been moving pretty quickly.
Yeah, I absolutely hear what you're saying. I kind of am on this panel to kind of express this is easy for me to say as I'm a senior. I'm graduating next year. I won't be here for this kind of whatever happens next year. But I think this kind of sense of emergency, I'm definitely someone who has severe anxiety, especially when I started CVU. I think there was definitely a fear kind of a certain emergency, and kind of the connection to home was really important to me. I think it is really important for students to be able to classify what an emergency is and have the resources within themselves and know how to access those resources in institutions like a school without texting their parents. I think that's really important for me. My experience here has been in the school is here to help you. I think it's really important students feel that way. Of course, not all students will, but right now I could probably access 3 different phones and get to them in under 10 seconds. There are phones all around here in case there is an emergency that students could access, but I also think it's really important to kind of establish that when I enter a class and I feel uncomfortable, that is something I need to learn how to deal with in my life going forward. I also think that this kind of the emotional impact of not having your cell phone is something that's really important to address. And I think if there is cell phone withdrawal, I think we talked about this in the PFS committee a little bit, that there would be resources in the school to kind of help students dealing with that. I think kind of on all levels, and that's definitely kind of work that the community could do together to kind of figure out how we're gonna move forward. And then just in terms of kind of digital citizenship, I think that truly the best thing that we can teach students about their phone is how to live without it, and kind of how to communicate, be vulnerable, I kind of wrote that like the things that I would kind of notice most changing would be like more authenticity, vulnerability, and like openness with our community. And I think just kind of like understanding how to have those kind of connections with our peers is a really important lesson. And kind of, though, while not teaching you to use your phone necessarily, which I believe that most students are kind of understanding from their parents or outside of school, it kind of does teach you how to kind of live in a world that is really increasing with the phones, but kind of just being able to live without it. So that's all I have to say.
Just before I pass it to you, Angela, I just want to be really respectful of everybody's time. So I am going to let Angela respond, and then, sorry, I saw your hand in the audience. And then at that point, if there are more thoughts or questions that people have, I'm not going to volunteer other administrators, but I'm available. Catherine just volunteered herself to stay back for a few more minutes. We're happy to talk to you for a little while longer. And I'll share a feedback survey in a moment. TJ, I don't know. TJ.
Fair.
I have to remember thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think it's really important in any conversation for everyone to feel like they can voice their opinions, whether they're in the majority or the minority. Certainly important in the legislature. Have a lot of respect for that. And I wanted to share a couple of thoughts because I've heard a lot of, these are very common points that are raised in opposition to such a policy or, a law. And we do teach kids, it's very important to teach kids. We've been teaching kids about, responsible use of alcohol and other drugs for years and decades. And, we have sex education and all kinds of things that we teach in school without providing drugs and alcohol in school. We can teach those, I believe, we collectively, community, schools, parents, we can teach responsible use without allowing unnecessary access to the addictive product. The issue of safety comes up very frequently, and I always start this by saying we have to stop and think, all of us adults, about how that must feel for our kids in the age of school shootings, and we have to deal with that through our gun violence prevention laws and culture. There's only so much we can do with the Second Amendment, but gun culture in our society is a pretty terrifying thing in a lot of ways. I have in front of me a statement from the National Association of School Resource Officers who just put out this, it's written testimony and a media statement 2 weeks ago, I believe. And so I'll just say the National Association of School Resource Officers is dedicated to making schools and children safer by providing the highest quality training to school-based law enforcement officers, just to give you a broad understanding of who they are. And this is the executive director of that organization writing to say, NASRA was extremely supportive of a statewide bell-to-bell phone and social media free policy for grades K through 12. We do not support an exception for emergencies. We know that schools, students, and staff are safer when student cell phones and personal devices are not present during the day. For this reason, if students are allowed to bring personal devices to school, they should be securely locked away and inaccessible to the student from the first bell to the last bell of the school day. And I think part of this stems from the fact that the number one preventive factor in school violence is a sense of belonging and community in the school. And phones are really do not help that sense of belonging and community, and can in fact erode that sense of belonging and community. So apart from being a practical thing, you'll hear folks talk about, safety officials talk about noises that phones can make in an emergency, in an event like an active shooter situation. They can alert invaders to a student's location, and the misinformation that is spread. I know this happened in Montpelier when there was a police response to a hoax last year. The misinformation that is spread immediately via social media, student use of cell phones in the moment, is really, really disruptive and actually impedes law enforcement as well in their effort to respond.
Sir, and then we'll come to you and then.
Okay. So when I was thinking about coming over here earlier, my initial reaction was that a complete ban on cell phones would be like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I had this idea that the phones are here to stay, so learning how to deal with them is a good thing. I regularly teach my students how to use and deal with AI resources because in my field, that is going to be the way of the future for them. It'll be transformative to their work. And to send them into the world without having talked about it is a major disservice. But one thing I noticed in this conversation, as I said before, is that the kind of problems people have described are very alien to my experience as a teacher at PTSU. And I wonder why is that? So an obvious reason is that these are just younger people. When they reach, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, or older, it's just less of an issue. I mean, there's no, as far as I know, at least there's no policy that we have about phone usage. And people use their phones sometimes, and sometimes they don't. I don't know, it's like a non-issue in my world. So you have students here who are seniors, who are on the verge of going into that universe. So I don't know if it makes any sense, but I mean, it feels like there's a transition there that happens. Complete ban on phones, maybe that's the right thing to do, but on the other hand, there are disadvantages too.
Although Marita's super mature, she's not a senior though. You're a sophomore? Yes, we have a sophomore and a senior.
So my name is Tracy Brown. I have 3 boys. One is a UVM, one is a sophomore, and one's in 8th grade. And I just want to thank Megan for speaking up because I think maybe part of the reason you don't get a lot of parental pushback is because people don't know about it. I learned about it from my son, who was given a survey by another student, and I started emailing the school board chair asking about it, and that's when I learned about it. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'll try to keep them brief, but I think the school safety one is a big one. And I would not consider my boys inherently anxious at all. And since middle school, they always tell me that they know exactly what they will do in a school shooting. And it will involve a phone. They will get out and they will reach out by phone. I appreciate what you said about the school resource officers, but we don't have a school resource officer here. We used to, but we don't have one anymore. And I think what's missing from this conversation is talking about kids who do this well. I feel like my boys do this well. And I'm a social worker as well. I worked at DCF for 28 years until a few months ago when I sat with families about all sorts of things. I mean, hundreds of families. And there are a lot of kids who do this well. And I think the statistics, I understand that those are statistics that are maybe taken from the internet, but do those apply to the kids here? Because I also, in watching some school board meetings recently, I'm seeing a lot of studies about how great kids are feeling about their identities and the schools they're going off to and how accomplished they are. And so, are these statistics the kids in our school? Or who are they? Or which is it? And that's what I'm left wondering. Because I'm proud of my kids of how they're handling their phones. And I actually am really glad that they did have some access and I was able to teach them that at a younger age. So I am not in full agreement with this, and I don't think the system in place now has been used. My kids told me it wasn't really used. my one son, who's at CVU now, said in the classes where it is used, he feels like it works well. He feels like at lunch he's talking with all of his friends and they're not on their phones at all. So, you know, I would like to hear more about the kids that are doing this well. And I guess not so much doom and gloom. Statistics, they can be great, but they can also just, I don't know, paint a really broad stroke that doesn't apply to everybody. And I think there are a lot of kids who are managing this well. And I just want to point that out. It doesn't have to be scary and awful. I feel like my kids have done well with it. And I have not gotten one phone call home from school about them using their phones inappropriately. So just another thing to think about for all of you.
Thank you for that. Again, I do want to be really respectful of everybody's time. Oh, I forgot about this. There is the Connecting Youth group through the district is doing a screening of screenagers tomorrow, which is something that folks may be interested in as a sort of follow-up to this conversation. And then this is going to get, you're welcome to take a picture of the QR code on your way out, and it's also going to get sent out through School Messenger in about half an hour.
27 minutes.
Which is a very short survey with 2 questions and a comment box for folks to be able to give us feedback, and that's going to be coming to the CVU administration, which will then share with the school board.
So the irony is inescapable that we take a picture of that on the phone.
The irony that we have a QR code.
Yes.
We come across that a lot in this conversation. Yes. I do really want to thank you for, are you done? Sorry.
Go ahead, Catherine.
You love all of you. It looked like you were coming. I really do appreciate folks coming out and sharing their insight, and whether it's in support of a phone-free school or really having legitimate concerns about why we need to do this or whether this is the right thing. We're having the same conversations among our faculty, and I think we're having some of the same conversations with our students, and we'll have more of those conversations with our students. And we're having the same conversations at the board. This isn't, the board had their varying decisions or opinions on the board as well. So thank you very much for being here tonight and sharing your both your support and your concerns. And please fill out the survey, because that's really going to give us a really good sense of where the community stands on this and what the concerns are, the broader concerns of the community, as well as the reasons why people would support this. We've gotten really great feedback from our faculty and staff in the 2 surveys that we've done. And the survey that the Students Point sent out, there were over 500 students who responded to that, which is amazing to get that many students to respond to a survey. And there were really, really thoughtful opinions that were shared there as well. So, sorry, I jumped up.
It's fine.
It's fine. You're the principal. And the principal. So,
What's the timeline? Is there, going forward, what's the select, what time is what's the school board doing, or what do we?
good.
Board member question
Board
right
question.
Well, we met last night and discussed, it wasn't a full discussion. We met last night about many things. This was more of a report to the board with some question asking, but not a full discussion. So we were really eager to get this event underway and also the survey. And so the data from, anecdotal data from this discussion tonight, but also from the survey will come back to the board. And so timeline is, it's still up for discussion. There's no like date of a vote or anything like that. It's all still under discussion. But I think, if we're making a decision one way or another, it would be to affect next school year if we decide to have a policy or not. Fair?
And that said, the CVU administration and faculty need to come up with a plan for next year. So we're working kind of in tandem, but we wouldn't want to leave the year, wouldn't want to end the year without having a plan for next year, because we don't want to make that, I don't want to make that unilaterally over the summer. So we'll nudge our board a bit and we'll work together like we always do, because they're awesome.
Also, the intent is to have procedures publicized and finalized to launch at the same time as a policy, so that we're not saying, hey, here's the policy, but we have no idea how we're enacting it. So that's a parallel process.
Would the same, if whatever's applied to students, is it going to be the same for staff as well? Like, Ben, I'm just curious what that would look like.
I don't know.
At Harwood, we'd model it after Harwood, I think. At Harwood, faculty and staff don't have their phones with students. If they're in an office and students aren't there, then they do have access to their phones. They're not in yonder bags. And to be clear, we're not, I just talked to the principal at Harwood on, I talked to her yesterday, and the yonder bag piece isn't the answer. It has, however, significantly shifted their climate by having the policy similar to what you were talking about in Memorial South. I do want to be respectful that folks came for a 7:30. TJ's going to walk out. He told me he's walking out at 7:30. If you would like to ask any questions or stay, we will happily stay and we'd be happy to chat with you. Thank you, board, or thank you, panel, not board. Thank you, board. Thank you.